Hi, welcome to the Grief Awakening podcast. My name is Alyse Duso, and I'm a grief coach and Reiki practitioner here in Nashville, Tennessee. I help guide others who are grieving to reignite their relationships with their loved ones on the other side, helping them ease the ache of grief. This is a podcast where we can have open conversations about grief and loss, mediumship, science, and I'll even tell you my story as a young widow. If you like this episode, don't forget to hit that follow button. And if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to give me a follow on Instagram at IntuitivelyAlyse. Enjoy the show. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Grief Awakening. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest to you. Before I jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know that we're doing something a little different this week. We're also doing a video version of this podcast episode. So if you'd like to watch the video recording of this episode and this interview, you can head over to YouTube. I'm in the process of setting up the YouTube channel, and when it's all ready, the link will be in the show notes of this episode. So if you'd like to be able to see visually as well as listen, you can head over to that space. I'm going to try. I'm not committing to anything 100%, but I'm going to try and start putting out video versions of these episodes, especially since most of the episodes are already recorded on video. I'm just not a video editor. So it's going to be rough cuts, but it's also available in that space. And I'm excited that you're here today. Our guest today, Adrianne Myer, aka Addie. We connected via Instagram a few months ago now, and she is the owner of Bandit Branding. She does digital marketing and personal branding, but she's also moving through grief. And I want to say that this is the first guest I've had on who is so early on in their grief journey and coming on to talk about their story. So huge shout out to Addie for being so brave and coming on the show to share your story with us today. We're going to chat a little bit about her business, but also her story of losing her mom just 6 months ago in May of 2023, and how that has impacted her life. And she's made some huge changes. And we're also going to talk about this amazing journal that she created, Finding Light in Loss. There's amazing prompts in here. We're going to get into all of this, and I'll have the link in the show notes for where you can find it if this is something you're interested in. But I just loved this conversation, and we could honestly chat for hours. And if you liked this episode and want more content with Addie and I, you can head over to her podcast, which has just relaunched. I'll leave the link for that in the show notes. It's called There's More Where That Came From. And I'm so excited for her that she's getting back into the podcasting space. We talk about grief and business in that episode. And it was so fun to record together and get to spend so much time together this week. So thank you so much, Addie, for having me and also coming on to Grief Awakening. I know we're going to be connecting more in the future. You're just so fun and a beautiful light and so great to talk to. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Addie Myer. Welcome back to Grief Awakening. I'm so excited to introduce my guest here today, beautiful Adrianne Myer. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here. What a great way to spend a Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know how long it's been that we've been connecting on social media, but I know we talked about this on your podcast a little bit, but I'm so glad that you reached out. I know you had listened to this show and heard Anna Grace's podcast as well. And now you're here, full circle moment, to tell a little bit about your story and your mom and your business. And I want to also talk about Finding Light in Loss.
Oh my gosh. That looks so cool to just like see someone like hanging on to it.
We have to talk about the journal as well.
Yeah.
But will you just kind of start us off by telling us a little bit about you, what your background is? And then if you want to, I would give you space to talk about your mom and your relationship with her.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm so excited. So I'm Adrianne Myer. All my close friends call me Addie, and so when you look on Instagram, I always have that on there. That's my little nickname. I currently live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm originally from Kansas, but if you like look at a map, Lincoln, Nebraska is just an hour actually north of where my family lives. We live right on the border in a tiny little town, like 600 people. I'm like related to everyone there. And so I currently live in Lincoln, and I split my time between Lincoln and our farm. It's like Hanover, Kansas is the name of the town. And I farm with my dad too, which sounds weird to say out loud, but I grew up as a farm girl, and I just like never really like owned the name of it. And finally this year, after my mom had passed, which we'll get more into that, I was going back, like, I mean, splitting my weeks, and I would go home like Thursday through Monday morning, and I'm helping my dad out. And I was like, you know what? I am a farmer. Like, I am
Mhm.
farming right now. So I like to say I'm a farmer, and I'm also a digital marketing strategist. I have my own digital marketing business where I work one-on-one with clients. I have a few people on my team, and we help small businesses, but more specifically personal brands help grow their business. So I'm really obsessed with people who want to use their name and likeness to be able to not only grow the business that they have now, but open up more opportunities. So that means I'm really obsessed with storytelling. I love hearing people's stories and then figuring out ways of how to share that story, whether that's social media or email marketing or blogs. And so that's what I do.
I love that. I'm gonna need to hire you, actually.
I I have some, I mean, I've been doing this since I've always been in sales and marketing. And I
Yeah.
feel like throughout my professional career, you just niche down over time and make little twists and turns and pivots. And when I had moved to Scottsdale, I had gotten a job in sales, and I was like in the hair industry at that time. So I was selling luxury hair care products to salons. And then that was really at the time of in 2016. This is when people were like not just taking pictures of their food, but they were like like the grainy filters. Like, we were just
Yep.
starting to really post it. So I came up during that time, and I really started to become interested in, oh my God, like influencer marketing. Like, I loved that people could post about a product and it would influence other people to buy it outside of the brand's marketing team.
Mhm.
So I just kind of followed the yellow brick road of marketing. And after Scottsdale, I'd moved to LA. And in LA, everyone has to have like 6 jobs to survive. So I was bartending. What else? I was doing Uber Eats. I was bartending. I was doing Rover dog walking. I was like freelance marketing. I was going to auditions because I thought I wanted to be an actress, which I still do. My dream
Yeah.
is to be an actress on Young and the Restless. Or a Hallmark movie. A Christmas Hallmark movie would
I
be a
could see
dream.
it.
Me too. Whenever, I don't know if you do this, but whenever I watch like the Christmas Hallmark movies, and this is no shame on any of the actors, I just watch it, and I think I could literally do that. Like, I could be that actor. I think I could be very, very
Even like
convincing.
your story, which we're going to talk about in a second, like even you like moving home to go work back on your family's farm and stuff,
No,
like Hallmark movie,
it really is.
1000%.
It really is.
It's
Uh,
Christmas time, you know?
Right. God, no, I actually, that had come up a lot with a few of my friends back home, because it was like, your mom died, you're coming back, you're working on the family farm. The only difference is I'm basically related to like everyone in my hometown. So it's like it has to be a traveler that comes in and swoops me off their feet or something like that. So yeah, so I was in LA, and I got into doing freelance marketing. And yeah, I just like stuck with it. And I've seen it all. Like, I've seen the influencer marketing, and the affiliate marketing, and just the coming and going of all of the trends, as far whether it's like reels or TikToks and doing dances. Like, if you're still here and listening, and you are in the digital marketing business and you've been here for a bit, I salute you, because it is hard out there.
Yeah. So when you were living in LA and hustling and doing all those jobs, did you ever think, oh, I'm going to go back and work on the family farm?
No. Okay, so I had wanted to live there since I was 7. We went out there on a family vacation and we did the like Disneyland, like all the things that you do. And we had family that lived out there. And so I was just convinced that that is what life would be like when you move there. Like it's all like you go knock on some producer's door and they hire you. And that definitely was not how it was. But I never saw myself coming back. I think like I knew the option was there, obviously. And my mom actually had always told me this. She was like, go do it because you can always come back home. Like you always can, but you can never go away and move. Or the older you get, the harder it's going to be. Or,
Yeah.
more life's responsibilities came up. So she was always super encouraging of me to like go out and do that. And so I look back at it now because we had moved from California back to Kansas right before COVID, like literally right before it started. And if I would have been in LA when COVID started, I mean, all of my jobs would have been
Mm,
affected. Like I can't imagine what life would have looked like. And we lived in Venice, like a mile from the beach. Like it was such a great experience for a short amount of time. I was there for like 3 years. And I remember being so sad when I left, but now looking back, I think it was such divine timing as far as how I was removed out of there. And
yeah.
honestly, too, I was able to be back when my mom started getting sick. And I can't
Mhm.
imagine if I wouldn't have lived nearby, how that would have felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably would have been a lot of regret or like guilt there for not have been there
Ah,
during the process.
a hundred
Let's,
percent.
if you feel comfortable, let's talk about your mom a little bit and kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
what that journey was into where you are now, which is about, 6 months out now, right?
Yeah. So my mom, I know everyone's going to say like their mom is the best person in the world, but my mom really was like the best person in the world. She just recently passed away on May 20th. She was only 58 years old. And I love telling her story because I think it's very unique and kind of just like looking back on moving away. I think that there's a story within it that has like a deeper meaning. But she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease when she was 14 years old. So she was in 8th grade and just getting ready to become a high schooler. And she just hadn't been feeling well. She was starting to like, be tired all the time. And this is back in the late 70s. And so they, took her in and they found out she had Hodgkin's disease, which back then it was kind of treated not only as like a form of cancer, but it was kind of treated like you were tainted. She
Mm-hmm.
had told me stories about how the kids at school and her classmates would pick on her and they wouldn't invite her to come do things. And like you think about that as like a 13-year-old girl and thinking like there's something wrong with you, like my heart just feels for that. And at that time, the treatment for that was like a radiation. They were called cobalt treatments. And, Hodgkin's live like it's in this area, like by your neck and stuff. And so the radiation and those treatments just tore up tissues and arteries. And if you know anyone who probably had those treatments in the late 70s and early 80s, a majority of them are not alive. Like there are not a lot of studies or, like what do I want to say, tests that come back, that people like a lot of people are having problems from that. So when she turned, I think she was 36, she had her first heart attack. And I'm
Wow.
34, and I think about that all the time. And, she had me, and when they brought her in, she had ended up having a triple bypass. And it was because all of her arteries and those piping pieces that she needs to be able to function were just tore to crap. And so that's really where the journey started. So she survived that when she was 14 and she was able to, live a normal life and get married and have babies and, work and do all those things. I always like to share pictures of her on my social media because she really, like, I look at them and I think like you are so beautiful. Like, and that's not just saying that to say it, like she truly was like this aura where I'm like, no wonder you weren't here for that long because something that beautiful is not real. at all.
Mhm.
And like I see those pictures and I feel that. And so she had that first scenario happen when she was like 36. And just from then, they kind of told her, listen, you're always going to have something going on because of this. And so all we can do is monitor it and take care of it and just be proactive about it. And so it's a classic scenario of one thing would go wrong and then the next and then the next and the next. So she, fought for, a good over 20 years with this, and, multiple bypasses and replacements and medication and things like that. And so a few years ago, 2021, she had like a major heart surgery to be able to repair some pieces. And that was really scary because we were preparing for the worst. And
Mhm.
that was kind of my wake up moment too of this isn't going to last forever. Like we're fixing a problem right now. And I think that, you never want to plan on your mom dying, but I had been preparing for it. And
Yeah.
it sounds really morbid because I know that there was a lot of nights where I was like, don't think like that. But realistically, I was like, this is why you treat every day like it's your last. And I say that to say a lot of people don't have the opportunity to prepare for that, you know? And so when I think about my grief journey, I attribute a lot of, the way that I've been healing to preparing in that way. So she had her heart surgery and it went great. Like she killed it. Like we were in there, we were having the time of our lives and we're like, yes, we've got to hold on this. And one thing after another kind of started happening. And then I'll speed this up. Over the last year, so a year ago, she started getting sick again, was just starting to have issues in other parts of her bodies because your heart is what, pumps everything everywhere. And so she was having digestive issues and she went into the hospital and we were in there for a month, which anyone who has ever had a family member who has stayed in the hospital for, I mean, more than a week, my heart
Mhm.
goes out to you because not only does it play a toll on the patient, but I think it plays such a toll on our family. And we're from a really small town. So we were having to go, like it's 3 hours was the hospital from where my parents lived.
Oh
And
my
my dad's
gosh.
my dad's a farmer. And
Yeah.
so that was one of those things where I took that responsibility and I, had some really great friends and family that were able to be there throughout it as well. But for a whole month, I stayed there in that hospital or at a friend's house there in Kansas City. And my dad had to go back. Like we're feeding America. Like, it was during harvest, it was during calving season. It was like, that was hard. And so she made it out of that month-long stay in the hospital. And that was last November. And from then, it just wasn't the same. And, May came along and it had kind of been 6 months after that incident. And she got put back in the hospital. She got life flighted back down to Kansas City. We were there for about 3 weeks. And I think in my head, I always thought we were going to make it out of there. And I never thought that I was going to hear this, but they came in one day and they just said, there's nothing we can do. And
Mm.
it was weird because I felt like she was getting better. And I just like there was not like she was talking, like we were having normal conversations. We were laughing that morning. We were like messing around with, we would always mess around with like the gloves and like, put on like little plays and stuff. And they came in and they said, there's nothing more we can do. And we think you have about 3 to 6 months to live. And even my mom and I were both just like, what gives you the right to say that? And also, we're having the time of our life right now. And it's kind of a bummer to put on this party. And that was the Thursday before Mother's Day. And so I started learning about what hospice is. And I never thought I was going to have to figure out what that was. And we started making the plan for her to go home. And naively, I was like, okay, 3 to 6 months. That's all of summer, or that's all of summer and fall. Great. We're going to make it the best ever. And she got home, and 3 days later, she passed away in our living
Wow.
room. We had a bunch of family there. My best friend, she drove up. She was able to be there. She was like sitting right next to me and watched her take her last breath. And I will tell you that the day before that, I did not see that happening. Like that morning when I woke up, she had a really bad night that night. But I didn't think that was going to happen. But one thing that it's like I've never talked to anybody about, you're the first person, is when she got put on hospice, I didn't understand the level of care that was needed. And I mean, we had to lift her up out of a bed to go to the bathroom. Like she
Mhm.
couldn't do anything. She was so weak. And I remember like that first night thinking, how am I going to do this for 3 months? How am I going to do this for 6 months? And I have really dark humor. So does my mom. So I can say this. But, afterwards we joked, she was probably like, these fuckers aren't going to be able to take care of me. So I need to speed up the process here because this is not going to be good. But I think we did pretty good. But I mean, just the medication, like everything to keep track of. I feel for anyone who has a family member in hospice because it's a lot to keep track of. It's stressful. I don't know who I would be if I would have had to go through that longer than 3 days,
Mm.
but I think that all happens for a reason, I'm sure. So that's my mom's health journey story, which sounds awful. But
No.
she was just the most purest, funniest person you've ever met. So I'm glad I have the memories that I do, and I'm glad that I was able to take care of her in the ways that I could. And so, yeah, that's her story.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah.
vulnerably sharing all
Yeah.
those pieces. When you were saying that you and her were just having like the time of your life in the hospital for those few weeks, like I can just from that I can feel like her energy and probably what she was like and what your relationship. I think that's a huge testament to your relationship with one another,
Mhm.
which I just love. Um, do you feel like that last push of her like being vibrant, you're like, no, I think she's getting better. I hear of that a lot of like
Mhm.
people when they're at the end of their life, they have these moments of clarity or it seems like they're getting better. Did that
Mhm.
ever cross your mind that this is just like that last little push and we're actually headed down a different road?
I think I was really naive about it, because they had told us that I think on a Thursday, and so that weekend we kind of knew it was the last weekend, and I had told my dad he was going to come down on that Monday because they were going to kind of give us the hospice plan. Well, that day before was Mother's Day, and so I knew if they were right about 3 to 6 months that this would be my last Mother's Day with my mom,
Mm,
and so it's like that's not what I want to do. Like I don't want to spend it in a hospital. And
yeah.
I think I wanted it to be special for her, you know? Sorry.
No, it's okay. I've
Uh
already been crying while you were
no, no,
talking.
no, and so my mom's like just one of those people who she always cares about everybody else. And even when she was in the hospital, like she was making sure she could keep track of everybody and what everybody's whereabouts were. And so we had planned the day, like it was just going to be me and her all day in the hospital. And so I remember I went to Target and I got all of these like little things to give her like a pedicure and do a facial. And I've got Pepsi. Pepsi was like her favorite drink. And like some candy and stuff. And so like that's what we were going to do that day. And I mean, at this point, because we had been there so much, the nurses and I, and like,
Of
we were
course.
cool, like
Yeah.
we had the cool family, we're fun. And also like I think we presented ourselves really well and we made sure we like took care of the staff there too, because like that's not easy. A lot of these nurses are coming in for the shift and they're like, wait, you were just told you have what? And that's not their fault that the patient is distraught about it. And so I remember that morning the nurse came in and she was like, you guys want to go for a walk today? Which at that point, we had not been anywhere. Like my mom wasn't walking. She could be in a wheelchair. She hadn't left the hospital floor. And they were like, go. And so they hooked us up and they let me take her loose all over the hospital. Honestly, I can't believe that's legal. It's probably not. So I don't know. There, but I remember we were going around and like walking down all the little corridors and things like that. But I look back on that and that was like her best day from the two big stays that she had been there. A lot could have gone wrong and nothing did. We ate lunch in the cafeteria and it was chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes and it actually was really good. And that's like one of her favorite things. So it was like, that's what we ate for lunch. And we went outside and we were like sitting by these flowers. And I have some pictures from that day that I like to share every once in a while.
Mhm.
And we got to spend a lot of time outside and that was really nice. And I still think on that day, I thought, there's no way that this is like we're okay. And I think
Yeah.
that helps me keep my optimism up because instantly when they said that, I was like, I have to be strong for her. Like I can't be sad about this. Like obviously I'm sad I'm losing my mom,
Mhm.
but I went into straight planning mode and I was like, all right, I got to pack my bag. I'm moving home for the summer and I'm going to let all my clients know what's going on. I mean, I don't know who that girl, like I look back on that week and I don't know who that girl is because
Mhm.
I've never met her before, but that girl is someone who gets shit done. And,
Yeah.
I told my friends and I told like my best friend, she hadn't seen my mom. And I was like, I really want you to see her before anything bad happens because I want you to remember her in a different way. And so I think that was something that my friends appreciated was me telling them this is what's going on and this is what has to happen and like this is how I need you to show up for me. And yeah, I just went into fight or flight mode, I think, and we
Yeah.
went home and we made everything nice for her, which my mom was like a homebody. Like she was a typical farmer's wife, but loved her house. And so I was glad. I think that's all she wanted was to just get home. Like I think that was what she was working for. And that's why she like kept her spirits up.
Yeah. I mean, you clearly pulled that strength from somewhere, probably came from the love of your mom and wanting her to have the best possible experience she can,
Mm-hmm.
making that transition. Um, did you ever give yourself the opportunity to just let yourself feel what was going on, or do you feel like that came later?
I did on my own.
Yeah.
The second time, well, like, okay, so the second time after the first time we spent in the month, I was like, this is not our first rodeo. Actually, I don't know if I have it in here. I have a sign. It's a tin sign and it says this ain't my first rodeo. And when she went to the hospital in May after the November experience, we brought the sign with us and we had it in the room. And so that was kind of our motto the whole entire stay was this isn't our first rodeo. Like we've been here, we've done this. So I think I stayed really strong in front of her, but she's a mom. She
Hmm.
knew. But the second time, I knew we're going to be here for a little bit. Let me get an Airbnb. Like, let me have a place that I can go and work and cook dinner and sleep in a bed and do my own laundry because loved hotels. I had a friend that I stayed with as well. And I'm so thankful for his hospitality. But when you are out of your element and you're feeling all of those emotions, there has to be something that remains the same. For me, it was like being able to make food. Like if I could make
Yeah.
my breakfast or make my dinner, if my dad was there, like he didn't feel like a fish out of water. So those times where I had a place to go back to, that's when I fell apart. Like that's when I was like a mess about things. But I
Yeah.
always tried to keep it together when
Hmm.
I, was around her because she's a mom, like she worries. And I knew that she knew I was falling apart, but I wanted to stay strong for her too.
Yeah, of course. Um, okay. So here we are 6 months out now. Like you're an only child, correct?
Hmm. Yep.
How has grieving been as an only child and like being the only person who can grieve her as mom?
Hmm. Um, I have a lot of different feelings about it. The first one I get from, and that was kind of influenced by a lot of people, because there's like an obvious elephant in the room. I'm not married and I don't have kids and I'm an only child.
Mm,
So the first thing you think of is like, well, she's not going to be there when I get married, or like when I have my first kid, right?
yeah.
So that's really tough.
Hmm.
But on the other side of that, I think about if I would have been married or if I had kids. And obviously life looks a lot different, right? Like I wouldn't have the same relationship that I had with my mom because I would have been sharing her with someone. Like moms just act different when they're all of a sudden grandmas. They don't treat you like you're a little kid anymore. They like your kids. Like my friends that have kids, I'm like, your mom likes your kids more than they like you, right?
Yeah,
And
it
there's
does come off
nothing
that way
right.
sometimes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And so I started to realize, I was like, dude, I was never supposed to get married and have kids before I lost her, because I wouldn't have had the same experiences and memories and laughs and giggles and trips that we took like I did. And so for that, I'm really thankful. So I've been able to look at that from two different ways.
Hmm.
It's made a lot of days feel really lonely and feels like you're the only one experiencing it. It makes you feel like no one else understands, but also like going back to the whole flip side of things, that's what's so cool. It's like no one ever will have the same relationship or experience that I did with her. And I think that's a really special thing. But it's a constant navigation. Like I'm going to be going through my first holiday
Hmm.
and, being an only child and my dad's a farmer, it's like that's going to look a lot different. Like all of these traditions and things that we did, she was in charge of that. And so I think I'll have like, a bunch of different thoughts throughout the holidays that I definitely am going to have to take some time doing shadow work on and exploring that. But it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And we can look at right, they say, oh, the grass is greener on the other side. It's not
Mhm.
always greener. There might be certain aspects where it looks nice, but like you'd be able to look at that and be like, well, I wouldn't have the relationship with her I have
Mhm.
now if I
Mhm.
had kids and the family and the whole thing. Like it probably would have been harder for you to show up too for
Oh,
her during that time period.
that made me think of a great example that I lead to this is I lost my grandma. My mom lost her mom at a fairly earlier age. I think my
Mm,
grandma was in her 60s, but it was like because of a procedure. Like she went in for a heart procedure and did not come out of it. And that was very traumatizing. And I remember when my grandma had passed, it was around the same time of year. It was like Memorial Weekend was coming up. And my mom is from a big family, like there's six of them. And everyone's married and has kids. Like multiple kids and stuff. And I remember the day after my grandma's funeral, and we all go out to the house afterwards. That's what we do in the Midwest is, you go back to the farmhouse and you have lunch and just everyone's there. And I remember at the end of the day, everyone left. Like everyone had to go back home. And because everyone had kids, and they had to sleep in their beds. And I remember how sad my grandpa was. And I thought about that and I thought for their entire marriage, there's never been an empty house. And all of a sudden, one day, it's gone.
mhm.
And that tore me up. And I remember like there was nothing we could do about it. Like one of my aunts, she had a little one and she was pregnant with her next one. And I remember how sad she was having to go back home, but you have responsibilities, right? And so I knew that that's what I didn't want it to feel like. I didn't want to leave my dad. I didn't want to like leave him there or think that he was like abandoned and everything had changed. So that's been a really huge adjustment of I never expected myself to feel like my whole life changed. Like, like I
Yeah.
had this responsibility and I'm sure you can, agree with that. It's like one day your life is this life and literally the next day everything about your life has changed. And that was a grief journey that I haven't expected. I think I knew I'm going to grieve my mom dying. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that I was going to grieve the old Adrianne dying,
Oh my God. Yes.
who on May 21st, like
Yeah.
she's not that girl anymore, you know. And I've had friends who have said like, I know you're not okay, and that's okay, but like you're different. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
know. And like it sucks. I miss her. Like she was a good time. This new Adrianne is a good time, but she's like a little bit more responsible now, or like her
Hmm.
thoughts are different. And I do miss that old Adrianne sometimes, but that old Adrianne, she was, you know, she was the only child. She was the daughter. She was the little girl. She was the fearless person who, you know, like that typical little girl. And so that's been a grieving process that I haven't expected to go through.
Yeah, that is a huge piece that I think is not talked about a lot is when you lose someone, you're also grieving a past version of yourself a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. Like your identity as everything you were to that person, but
Mm-hmm.
also like, losing a mom as an only child or losing a partner, like huge identity shift and like what your life looks like now moving forward in the future too. And like grieving the things that would have happened, like her being at your wedding or me
Mm-hmm.
having a wedding, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
general. So
yeah.
I totally see that and feel that. I saw on Instagram, I was looking back at some of your previous posts and you had said that you feel more at home in your home because you can feel her there, like that's where
Mm-hmm.
you feel her the most. Has that made that transition back to being at the farm a
Yeah.
better experience for you because you can feel connected to her there?
Mhm. I feared for a really long time when she was in the hospital, and even between the two big stays, she was going to the local hospital a
Mhm.
lot. And I remember coming home on like certain days to like grab some stuff or like take care of some things. And I remember how empty the house felt because she wasn't there. And I was afraid that when she passed, that's how it was going to feel. But I realized, you know, those times where she was still alive and wasn't there, it was very absent because I knew she was at the hospital. But now I feel her everywhere. Like I love being there. That's where I crave to be. Um, and it's a mixture of things. It's I'm getting signs, I'm cooking in her kitchen. You know, everything looks, I mean, my dad and I have done a really great job keeping the place clean. So she'd be really proud of that. But like a lot of, you know, her clothes are still in the closet. And one thing about my mom is she had really good taste and her and I went shopping together. So I've inherited a whole closet of like really cute clothes. And so it's just, no matter if I'm in the house or if I'm out in the pasture or, you know, somewhere nearby, I feel like she's there. And I did feel crazy for a little bit until I started doing the work, which is how I found you and your
Hmm.
podcast. And I started to understand that this isn't crazy. This is an experience. And I'm really lucky to be able to experience this in this way. And so I almost crave more of it, right? Like when
Yeah.
I'm not there, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait till I go there because I wonder what's going to happen this time.
Mm. Like you're hoping every time you go home, there's some kind of new feeling of connection, whether it be a sign or
Mhm.
something new that you do.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll have to show more of this, but my mom was like a planner. Like she was Pinterest before Pinterest was Pinterest. We have no, like we have a filing cabinet and my mom would like always take out newspaper clippings or magazines and file them. We found an entire like binder folder of wedding ideas. And if you think about this,
For
she was
you?
saving for me. And these aren't things that she like compiled last year. These are things that she compiled like when I was in grade school. Like things that she would just find and love, like floral arrangements. And so I have this idea that someday when I get married, like I'm not one of those girls who likes to plan details. Like I could give
Yeah.
two shits less. Like it is not that for me. And I always knew, as like my mom's dream would be to plan this wedding. And I just have made a conscious decision that when that day comes, I'm just going to pull out the binder and like, this is what we're doing. Like it's
Yeah.
already
She's already
planned.
planned it for
It's already
you.
planned it. And a lot of my aunts and stuff have said she prepared you for this. And what I mean by that too is, all of her recipes are there. If I need to know how to cook a meatloaf, like I have the recipe. All of her filing cabinet things, like everything she had meticulously thought out and saved and put somewhere. And so that's the other thing. It's like, we're never going to run out of light bulbs and batteries. I don't think in my lifetime. Like we had so much food on hand that like my dad and I, we have to go to the grocery store to get necessities, but she is still taking care of us even when she's like not in physical form. And I think that has been probably one of the coolest experiences too.
Yeah, she's still mothering you,
Oh,
even from the other
100%.
side. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So beautiful. I've been crying a lot through this conversation.
Oh, girl, welcome to my life.
I apologize for my nose dripping, but okay. I want to talk about finding light and loss. And like, I cannot believe, first of all, that you're 6 months out and that you've already created something from this journey that you've been on, which is like, I mean, we were talking yesterday about where I was 6 months out. I was in a dark place. So like for you to have created something so beautiful for not only for you, but for other people moving through grief, like how? How did you get the strength or even like the courage to put something like this out?
Okay. So when I going back to the whole like digital marketing thing, I am an Instagram girly, like an OG Instagram girly. Like, give me a pretty picture and a beautiful caption. Like, let's make Instagram again, first of all. I'll die on that hill. I just like, come on, you guys. I'm not supposed to be dancing on videos here. Like, I
Adrianne
need
for
to be
president.
ready.
Let's make Instagram.
God, let's get t-shirt. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I where my dad and my mom, I still call it my parents' house, where they live, it doesn't really have great cell phone service. It's changing a little bit now, but like up until like 6 months ago, if I really wanted to if I want to make a phone call, if I like have a client call, I have to be over by like a certain cattle pen and like putting it on
I
there.
remember
So
like you and I were going to connect. I don't remember if it was Zoom or we were just going to do like a FaceTime, but we couldn't get a hold of each other
yep,
because you were
yep.
at the farm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think all my other neighbors have this problem. I don't know what it is in our like little nook of the world, but it's also been the best thing because I can't consciously be scrolling. Like I can only go so far. So I was having a lot of these thoughts, and also too, you just lost someone and all of these pictures are there, and being an OG Instagram girly, I wanted to share that. Like I wanted to show people that I was hurting, and I wanted to show people that this wasn't something that like anybody planned for. I wanted to show like, look how beautiful this person is. Like I wanted to share that with someone. And I think a part of that was I didn't have anyone else to share it with. My dad doesn't have Facebook, right? Like my aunts do, but I just needed something to put out there. And so I had started writing, almost like a journal entry on my phone. And it was because at night, like it wasn't that I couldn't sleep at night. It was just that like everything gets so quiet. Like in the country, it like so quiet and you're just sitting there with your thoughts. And so I would like either get out my journal or my, notepad on my phone, and I would just start writing. And then the next day I would, take a picture, my thought, and I would, send it out there. And I started to get a lot of like really positive attention for like what I was saying. And I remember one of my first posts that I wrote, I went to back to work really quickly because I work one-on-one with clients, so I can work from home. And the town where I'm living is only like an hour from the farm. So I remember I went to back to work really quickly, and I was meeting a client at a coffee shop, and I shit you not, I get in that coffee shop and there's every different age group of a mom and daughter. There's a mom and a little girl. There's a mom and a teenage girl. There's a mom and someone my age. And I like, it wasn't, I was mad. I was sad. I was trying to keep it together because I was going to meet a client. And that was one of the first posts I ever shared. And the feedback that I got from people, one, it made me feel seen and heard. And it had people talking to me, and I liked that attention, if I'm being 100% honest, because I wasn't getting it anywhere. I lost a motherly figure who was the person who was calling me 3 times a day, who was
Mm.
asking what I was having for supper, who, like, my mom and I talked 4 to 5 times a day, with, like, whether it was we're sending Instagram things together, we were sending Facebook messages, or texting or calling. And so that all of a sudden was gone. And so I think when I started to share that, I started to receive this female attention that I was craving.
Hmm.
And so I started sharing more and more, and kind of starting that conversation. But then I just started writing more, because I was having more of these thoughts. And I don't know who told me this, but I remember getting the advice of someone that said, don't stop writing. Like, please keep writing. Like, even if you don't share it, just keep writing. And I, like, have this big dream someday to write a book. But at the time, I couldn't have told you what the book was going to be about. I was like, maybe it'll be business and marketing.
Hmm.
I always see all those, like, Jenna Kutcher just wrote a book, or Rachel Hollis. And so I thought, oh, that's going to be the type of book I want to write. Like, my book is going to be in Target. That is my dream. And so all of a sudden I was like, this will be the book. Like, the book is going to be about my mom, 100%.
Yeah.
And so as I started writing, I say it in the journal, like in the first page, I'm like, there's some days where you know exactly what to write, because maybe it's a memory or an experience or something that happened. But there's also a lot of other days where you don't know what to write, but you know that you should. And so I just started making these journal prompts of, you know, on the days where you don't know what to say, what do you say? And I love, in our English comp class in high school, we always did a journal entry every day, and our teacher would have the journal prompt on the board. And I think there's something really fun and creative about that. So
Hmm.
started writing down those journal prompts. And then, to be truthfully honest with you, I'm a Canva girly, and being a digital marketer, I create things all the time. And I just started doing research, and I was like, I can make a journal. Like, I can do this. And I refer to my journal as, like, my Jolene, because Dolly Parton wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day. And this journal literally took me one day to put together. And I
Wow.
think that is such a testament to, if you have a pull on your heart, an idea, and you have, the time to do it, just sit down and start working on it. It really doesn't need to take as long as you think. And the right people will find it. And so I put it together. I, like, went through the process, to print it. And I just took some branding photos for it, because I want to, really push it out this holiday season, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people could use it. But yeah, I just wanted, maybe there was other people that could use it. And also, too, there's not a lot of great grief resources, in the sense of, when someone dies, yes, I love all the plants and I love the casseroles.
Mm.
Like, don't stop sending them. But
Keep them
also,
coming.
yeah, but also I was like, I think someone else would really like this. And, I've had a lot of people who have said, oh my gosh, my friend's mom just passed away, or this just happened, I'm going to send this to them. And
Hmm.
that's been so cool, just to know that other people kind of see the need in that too. And I hope it's the start to, I try not to be like this sad girl energy, but I love it because it's such a community. And when you find something that makes you feel better, whether it's writing an Instagram post to share, when you get that adrenaline, that can carry you through the whole day. And sometimes that's just what you need, is one thing to get you through today. Like, I'm not worried about tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'm worried about today. And so I kind of hope that when people are writing in this, that's what they needed today, and now they can power through the rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked a lot about on this show about how, like, journaling was a huge thing for me. I've always journaled, but, like, very infrequently. But after I lost my partner, it became like a regular thing, daily or every other day of journaling, just like writing how I was feeling that day, or even writing to him. I
Mhm.
love that this journal gives space for that, but also I think some of the prompts could help someone, like, maybe think about some things or work through some things in their grief that they hadn't thought about before.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
What One of the prompts in there is like, what's one of your favorite holiday memories? And,
yeah.
like, I think those are things that we think of,
Hmm.
but My biggest fear was that I was going to forget her or other people were going to forget her. And I think too, having something that you can go back and read your thoughts on it, or maybe a new memory comes up and you can like add to it.
Yeah. And I think that for me, I don't know if this was for you, that was one of the motivations behind sharing on social media too, is like, I just don't want people to forget him.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want people to forget your mom and like the beautiful light and energy that she is,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
always talk about them in present tense and because they're here with you. Let's really quick, I know we're getting close on time here, but I want to go back to the ways that you feel her and let's talk about some of the sign stories that have popped up because you told me such a cool one about the hummingbird and I want everyone here to hear it as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we both share the love for the book Signs. I still have to finish it,
You will.
but I will finish it. I'm like doing an audio version and like I have the other one on my nightstand. But so right when she was passing, like we could tell it was like happening. Some of my family members that were there, they like went out on the deck, like they left the room, and they had told us later that, you know, around the time that she would have passed, this hummingbird was flying around everybody standing out on the deck. And so, you know, when my grandma had passed, we had started, you know, the typical signs, the cardinals, the coins, the feathers. And, you know, my mom had always been big on that. She was always looking for a way to still stay connected with her mom. And I went along with it. I was like, okay, yeah, like got it. Cool. Not that I don't believe this, but this is getting a little out of hand. Now I'm a firm believer in it. And so that hummingbird happened right when she passed. The next morning, I had gotten up and, you know, it's Sunday morning. I could just lost my mom, not even like 12 hours ago. And I went outside on the deck and, you know, I just started like crying. Like it was one of those cries where you feel the tears coming down before your brain recognizes that you're crying. It was like
Mm.
that type of scenario. And right as I started crying, this hummingbird like zoomed by me and it was like kind of in the same place and I just knew that that's what that was. I knew that that was her, and it wasn't because someone had told me that. It was just this feeling of, it's like when you know someone's in your house. Like if you have a guest over, you're at your parents' house and you know they're downstairs, you just know they are. It was that feeling.
Mm.
And that's the only way I can describe it, is it's just like when you know someone's coming over to your house and who they are, and that's who it is. So that was the hummingbird that had first happened. And then later on that day, we're preparing for funeral arrangements. So, you know, this is Memorial weekend. Like we're cleaning outside, the first lawn mowing thing of season.
You're like, people are
And
coming over. We gotta clean the
right, I was
yard.
like,
Like
we
the
haven't
last
cleaned the
thing we want to
yard.
be doing.
Right, we haven't cleaned the yard since last summer.
Yeah.
Great. But also, that was a great time for people to come over and help. They're like, what do you need help with? I'm like, actually, we need this tree cut down in the backyard if you want to get back there. We need the gutters cleaned out of the house. I mean, when people asked what they can do, I was like, I'll give you a job. But we were cleaning out, you know, on the deck. There was like a table. My mom had, I mean, she was a decorator. So there was like a table and all of these like knickknacks and birdhouses and things. And I said out loud, I said, I wonder if we should move the table from here to over here. And this hummingbird, like aggressively zoomed, like almost hit me in the face. And it was that same feeling, but it was like, I said out loud, no, don't move that. Like I could hear my mom saying, don't move that. I put that there for a reason. It looks good where it is. And it was like, I said out loud, I go, no, fine, never mind. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Like I
And
put it back.
hummingbirds don't do that, by the way. They
Really?
typically like they don't really go close to people. In my experience, like they stay at a distance. I feel like they're very weary of humans. Um, so when they like for a hummingbird to come that close to you,
Oh,
that is like in your face, hello, 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 like I'm here.
oh my
Don't
gosh.
move my furniture.
No, for real. No, typical mom. Like she just like so, and we still haven't moved the deck furniture. Like they still it's still where it's at. So
Yeah.
uh,
I just love that.
yeah, no, I think the science thing though, like, and that's, you know, that's such a simple level of, you know, knowing that you're not
Hmm.
alone, which is sometimes all you need.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to learn more about those things too, and figure out those meanings, which is, I think those are like, even just learning and educating myself, that's kind of the era that I'm entering in right now is, okay, now that the dust has settled a little bit, where do I want to start exploring this relationship more? Which, when I had met you, that's what I was so excited about. And, things like Reiki and like Akashic records, like those terms have been coming up in, just what I've been reading. And so I'm like, okay, I think this is like the next step for me is now like, let's go a level deeper into what all of this means.
Yeah. You're like, I want to know more. Where can I get more of this? Like, I think
Yeah.
once you get a little taste of the connection,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, that felt so good. I want more. Let's keep this going. And then all of a sudden you're like in full blown spirituality. You're just like doing all
Right.
the things. And I love watching people's journeys progress as they get into this. I've seen it with my coaching container women and how they're starting to like dive in, like just full head into the water of spirituality. And it's not necessarily about that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what it's about. It's about building the connection with your loved one in spirit. But if that is a piece of it, I think that's so beautiful. So I'm
Right.
excited to see where you grow this connection and even maybe like how grief plays into your business, especially with the journal, and which I'm going to link for everyone to get on Amazon in the show notes. But other than that, tell everyone where they can find you. How can they connect with you? If they have a small business and want to maybe work with someone on branding, how can they get in touch with you for that?
Yeah. Okay. So my personal Instagram is Heyo Adrian. And that's where, message me. That's where I post a lot of like my grief like journey things, stories on my mom. My business is at bandit_branding, and our website is bandit-branding.com. And so that's a lot of fun work stuff. We share things about our clients, little tips and tricks. And then I have a podcast, and
Yeah.
that's called There's More Where That Came From, which I will have an episode with Alyse on here as well. We did a little swap. So that will be really exciting. I'm excited for everyone to hear that. And so Facebook, Adrianne Myer, and that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm so glad
Yeah.
we've finally like really gotten to connect and get to know each other. I think we're going to be best friends now.
Yep.
I've adopted you. So,
Yep. It's happening.
yeah, there's more where this came from.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Adrianne.
I love it. Thank you. This was so much fun.
Okay, friends, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Grief Awakening podcast. If you liked this episode, be sure to leave it a rating and a review, and don't forget to hit that plus sign button or the follow button so you don't miss another episode. As always, any resources mentioned during this episode will be listed in the show notes below. And if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to do so via email or on Instagram at intuitively_Alyse. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.